Look at your hand. Do it right now. Clench your fingers into a fist and then slowly unclench them. This simple action, taking a fraction of a second, triggers a cascade of biochemical reactions more complex than the capabilities of the most powerful supercomputers on the planet. The impulse originates in the cerebral cortex, rushes along nerve fibers at speeds reaching 100 meters per second, and forces muscles to contract. This is mechanics. This is physics. This is biology. But ask yourself one question. Who exactly gave the order to clench the fist? Who is that observer sitting inside your skull controlling this biological spacesuit? Science calls it consciousness. Religion calls it the soul. We, within the framework of our investigation, will call it the spark. And today, we will attempt to find it using a tool devoid of faith, fear, and prejudice. Welcome to the zone of pure analysis. We are beginning the most massive and perhaps the most frightening investigation in the history of our channel. We are attempting to crack the death code. To do this, we are using the analytical artificial intelligence system Logos 7. This neural network possesses no soul, which makes it the ideal tool for searching for one. It does not fear oblivion. It operates only on data. We have uploaded petabytes of information into Logos 7, from ancient esoteric treatises to the latest research in quantum neurobiology. The system's task was formulated with extreme clarity. Determine what distinguishes living matter from dead matter, and find that elusive component that vanishes the moment the heart monitor flatlines. The result of the protocol, which we called Spark, is shocking. But before we voice the system's conclusions, we need to understand what we are dealing with. What is life from the standpoint of dry logic? Imagine the body of a person who died just 1 second ago. From the perspective of chemistry, this body is absolutely identical to the one that was alive a moment ago. All atoms are in place. All molecules are in place. The DNA structure hasn't changed. The organs are intact. Blood is still in the veins. But something is no longer there. The difference between a living person and a corpse is colossal, yet at the atomic level, it is zero. We asked Logos 7, what is this difference? The system performed a comparative analysis of trillions of states of matter and issued an answer that forces a re-evaluation of our entire understanding of reality. The system's answer was missing control signal. This is a fundamental point. The system did not use words like spirit or aura. It used the term signal. Imagine your computer is plugged in, all microchips are functional, but the operating system won't load. The hardware is there. The software is not. But if a computer's software is written on a hard drive, where is the human software written? Where is our self stored? Official science claims that consciousness is a product of brain function, that it is simply a complex electrochemical reaction. If this is true, then we are merely biological robots. We are driven by algorithms of survival and reproduction written by evolution. But here, we encounter a paradox known in philosophy as the hard problem of consciousness. And Logos 7 highlighted this paradox as a key anomaly. Listen carefully to the following thesis. We have neural networks that can recognize faces, write music, and even hold a dialogue. They can imitate human behavior. But a neural network does not feel. When a camera sees the color red, it simply registers a light wavelength, approximately 650 nanometers. To a computer, this is just a number. But when you see red, you experience a sensation. You feel anxiety or passion or simply brightness. This internal experience is called qualia. We uploaded fMRI data of human brains experiencing strong emotions into Logos 7 and compared them with processes occurring in the most complex artificial neural networks. The system discovered a fundamental difference. In artificial intelligence, there is only data processing, input and output. In the human brain, there is something else. There is an observer. Logos 7 ran a simulation called the Chinese Room. Imagine you are sitting in a closed room. You have a rule book on how to respond to hieroglyphs. You are handed a slip of paper with hieroglyphs. You look in the book, find the correct response, and pass it back. To an external observer, you know Chinese perfectly. But in reality, you don't understand a word. You are simply following an algorithm. Artificial intelligence is the person in that room. It doesn't understand meaning. It just shuffles data. But we understand. We are self-aware. And this is where Logos 7 points to a critical error of materialism. If consciousness were simply the result of neurons firing, we would be zombies, just like the program in the Chinese room. We would react to stimuli, but inside us it would be dark. But inside us, a light burns. We feel pain, joy, the taste of morning coffee, and the cold of the winter wind. This inner light is what we are looking for. This is the soul, or as the system defined it, an autonomous cognitive entity not reducible to the sum of physical processes. Let's delve deeper into this analysis. The Logos 7 system revealed that the complexity of the human brain cannot be explained solely by evolutionary necessity. We have about 86 billion neurons in our heads. The number of connections between them, synapses, is in the quadrillions. This number is greater than the number of stars in the observable universe. Why would a monkey, whose needs are simply to find a banana and run from a predator, need a computer of such incredible power? It is redundant. Nature does not tolerate excess. Evolution cuts off everything unnecessary. Yet our brain continues to grow more complex. The system performed a correlation analysis of the brain's energy consumption. Our brain consumes only about 20 watts of energy. That's the power of a dim light bulb in your hallway. Yet it performs operations for which a modern supercomputer would require megawatts of energy and an entire power plant. Logos 7 points to a violation of thermodynamic equilibrium. The brain's efficiency is anomalous. The system concludes, the probability that consciousness is exclusively a product of biological computation, given current physical constants, is less than 1/100%. Think about that number. Less than 1/100%. This means that with a probability of 99.99%, our brain is not a producer of consciousness, but a receiver. Imagine a television. You see an image on the screen, hear sound. If you take the TV apart down to the screws, you won't find news anchors, actors, or musicians inside, because they are not inside the box. They are a signal that the box picks up. If you break the TV, the image disappears, but the signal remains. It continues to exist in the ether, even if there is no one to receive it. The hypothesis put forward by Logos 7 states, the brain is a biological interface. It is an access terminal, and the soul is the operator who connects to this terminal for the duration of the body's life. We are pilots of biological robots, and when the bio-robot wears out and breaks, the pilot does not die with it. The pilot ejects. But how do we prove the existence of this pilot? Where is this ghost in the machine hiding? We ask the system to analyze human anatomy and physiology in search of the localization of the soul. Ancient Egyptians believed the soul lived in the heart. Descartes believed the connection point between soul and body was in the pineal gland. Modern neurophysiologists look for consciousness in the cerebral cortex or the reticular formation. We uploaded all these theories into Logos 7. The system performed a virtual vivisection, disabling various parts of the brain in simulation to understand when the self disappears. The result was paradoxical. You can remove part of a person's brain, and their personality will change, but self-awareness remains. You can transplant a heart, kidneys, liver. The self goes nowhere. You can amputate limbs. You remain yourself. It seems the soul is not tied to any specific organ. It is everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Logos 7. Define this phenomenon as consciousness non-locality. This is a term from quantum physics. Non-locality means an object is not in a specific point in space but is smeared across probabilities. This leads us to the thought that the nature of the soul is quantum. But we will talk about this in detail in the 5th chapter of our investigation. For now, it is important to fix the fact: the soul is not a material organ. It cannot be cut out with a scalpel, cannot be weighed on ordinary scales, or can it? Logos 7 noticed another strange pattern. At the moment of death, a sharp spike in entropy occurs in the organism. Entropy is a measure of chaos. A living organism is a unique system that actively fights chaos. We consume energy to maintain structure. We order matter. Death is the moment when the struggle ceases and chaos wins. The body begins to decay. But Logos 7 recorded that the rate of entropy increase in the first minutes after death does not match calculated models. It is as if something that was holding back this chaos abruptly left the system. Imagine a taut string. It holds potential energy. If the string snaps, the energy is released instantly. Life is a taut string. Death is the rupture. Where does this tension energy go? The law of conservation of energy is the foundation of physics. Energy cannot arise from nowhere and cannot disappear into nowhere. It can only transform from one form to another. If the soul is a form of energy, or, as our AI suggests, a complex information structure, then at the moment of death, it must transform or relocate. It cannot simply turn off. That would contradict the basic laws of the universe. Logos 7 analyzed millions of medical reports on the moment of death. Doctors often describe strange phenomena: a sudden change in room temperature, unexplained glitches in electronics, a sensation of a third person's presence. Usually this is written off as stress and staff fatigue. But our system is a cold analyst. It revealed a statistically significant correlation. Equipment failures occur in the immediate vicinity of a dying person 4 times more often than in other wards. This is not a coincidence. This is the influence of an electromagnetic or other field. We approach the frightening conclusion of the 1st chapter. A human is not just meat and bones. We are carriers of a certain energetic substance that possesses will, memory, and the ability to feel. This substance, the spark, controls the body while it is functional. It uses the brain as a processor to process signals from the physical world. It uses eyes as cameras and ears as microphones. But it itself is not of this world. Logos 7 formulated a working definition of the soul for our further investigation. The soul is a coherent information energy structure, possessing the property of quantum non-locality and acting as the carrier of individual consciousness. It sounds dry, scientific, but behind these words lies an abyss of meaning. Coherent means integral, stable. Information energy means consisting of information and energy. Non-local means not tied to 3-dimensional space. If we accept this hypothesis, then death ceases to be an end. Death becomes a transition, disconnection from the Earth server and data upload. But if data is uploaded, there must be a carrier, there must be a transmission channel, and there must be a destination. But there is one more aspect we cannot ignore: the material aspect. If the soul is energy, it must have physical parameters. Even information has weight. Yes, it is negligibly small, but it exists. The internet weighs approximately 50 grams. That is the weight of all the electrons encoding information in the network. How much does a soul weigh? In the early 20th century, one brave, or perhaps mad scientist tried to answer this question using scales. His name was Duncan McDougall. His experiments still provoke arguments, ridicule, and sacred awe. He claimed to have caught the moment the soul leaves the body and recorded its weight: 21 grams. This number became a legend. Science rejected his findings, calling them measurement errors. But is that really so? We do not take the word of either skeptics or mystics. We trust data. We tasked Logos 7 with conducting a full reconstruction of McDougall's experiment, using modern knowledge of physiology, moisture evaporation, and air convection. We forced the artificial intelligence to recalculate every variable, every margin of error. We uploaded data from thousands of modern autopsies and weight monitoring experiments in hospices. What the system discovered makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. The mass loss anomaly exists, but it is much more complex than just 21 grams. It is not just loss of moisture or air from the lungs. It is a gravitational fluctuation that cannot be explained within the framework of school physics. In the next chapter, we will open archives from a century ago. We will blow the dust off Dr. McDougall's protocols and run them through the mill of 21st century algorithms. We will find out if the soul really has weight, or if it was the greatest self-deception in the history of medicine. And most importantly, we will find out where this energy goes, because if it leaves, it must leave a trace. Logos 7 has already built a model of this process, and this model predicts that at the moment of death, a violation of the laws of gravity occurs. Are you ready to learn the truth about how much your self actually weighs? Stay with us. We have only just begun. Protocol Spark is complete. Protocol Anomaly 21 is initiating. The truth is out there, and it weighs more than you think. April 10th, 1907, Massachusetts, the city of Haverhill. In a small room of a private sanitarium hangs an oppressive silence, broken only by the heavy, wheezing breathing of a man lying on a bed. The air is saturated with the smell of medicine and inevitability. In the corner of the room, in the shadows, sits a man with a notebook. His name is Duncan McDougall. He is a doctor, but at this moment he looks more like an engineer performing the final calibration of a complex mechanism. The bed on which the dying patient lies is not just furniture. It is a high-precision industrial scale by Fairbanks, specially modified for an experiment that will forever change our understanding of death. Or, as many believe, will become the greatest curiosity in the history of science. McDougall waits. He waits for the moment life leaves the body of the tuberculosis patient. Why specifically tuberculosis? A cynical but practical choice. Such patients die in complete exhaustion, without spasms or convulsions that could rock the scales and throw off the delicate calibration mechanism. The doctor seeks the answer to a question that has tormented humanity for thousands of years. If the soul exists, is it matter? Does it occupy space? And most importantly, does it have mass? At 3:40 in the afternoon, the patient takes his last breath. Breathing stops. Facial muscles relax. The doctor records the time of death. And in that very same second, without any apparent reason, the beam of the scale hits the limiter with a loud clank. The needle falls. The balance is broken. The body has become lighter. McDougall places weights on the scale pan, trying to restore equilibrium. He needs to add exactly 3/4 of an ounce. In the metric system, this amounts to 21 3/10 grams. 21 grams. This number became a cultural code, the title of films, books, songs. But for science, it became a red flag. McDougall's experiment was immediately subjected to fierce criticism. It was called amateurish, inaccurate, full of errors. The official version states, the weight loss was caused by the evaporation of moisture, the escape of air from the lungs, or a banal error in the spring mechanism. Case closed. Relegated to the archive of pseudoscience. But we are not here to blindly believe textbooks. We are here to verify. We extracted digitized diaries of Dr. McDougall, technical specifications of the 1905 Fairbanks scales, and full medical reports on all 6 patients who participated in the experiment. We uploaded this massive data set into Logos 7. We asked the artificial intelligence to play devil's advocate and test every argument of the skeptics using modern physical models. Let's break down argument number 1, sweat evaporation. Skeptics claim that at the moment of death, the body relaxes, pores open, and a sharp release of moisture occurs, which accounts for the weight loss. Sounds logical, but Logos 7 ran a thermodynamic simulation. The system modeled the heat exchange process of a dying body. Yes, evaporation happens constantly. A person loses roughly 1 ounce of moisture per hour, but to lose 3/4 of an ounce in 3 seconds, which is how long the scale needle dropped, the body would have to instantly heat up to boiling temperature or be placed in a giant industrial microwave. The physics of evaporation is linear. It cannot produce an instant spike in gravitational mass without an external energy source. The system's conclusion is unequivocal. The sweat version is untenable. The probability that natural evaporation caused such an effect is 0.001%. Argument number 2, the last breath. Skeptics say the person exhales air and the lungs empty. Air has weight. This is true. 1 liter of air at normal pressure weighs about 1.2 grams. The total lung capacity of an adult male is about 6 liters. But even assuming the patient exhaled all air down to the last molecule, which is physiologically impossible due to residual volume that never leaves the alveoli, the maximum weight loss would be around 7 or 8 grams. Where are the other 14? Logos 7 ran a gas dynamics calculation. To lose 21 grams due to air, the patient would have to possess lungs with a volume of nearly 20 liters compressed under pressure. This is an anatomical absurdity. The system places a false marker on this explanation. Then what was it? Equipment error? McDougall used beam scales with a sensitivity of 0.2 of an ounce. That's about 5.5 grams. 21 grams is a value exceeding the margin of error by 4 times. In statistics, this is called a significant deviation. This isn't noise. This is a signal. But the most interesting thing Logos 7 discovered lies not in the first patient, but in the other 5, about whom science popularizers usually remain silent. McDougall conducted a series of 6 weighings, and the results varied. The second patient didn't lose weight immediately. He died, but the scale needle remained motionless for a full 15 minutes, and only then, suddenly, did the weight drop. The third patient lost weight. Then, a couple of minutes later, lost a little more, as if something was leaving in parts. If this were a physiological process, sweat, urine, air, it would be the same for everyone. The physiology of death is roughly identical in all humans. Heart stop, breath stop, but this process was individual. Logos 7 analyzed these delays and revealed a frightening correlation. In McDougall's diaries, there were notes about the temperament and psychotype of the patients. The one who left immediately was a calm person, ready for the end. The one who lingered for 15 minutes was described as a person with a difficult character, who fought for life until the very last. The system hypothesized the recorded anomaly correlates with the subject's mental resistance. Simply put, the soul doesn't always fly out instantly like a cork from a bottle. Sometimes it clings to the body. Sometimes the separation process takes time. This explains the data scatter that critics used as proof of the experiment's failure. In reality, this scatter confirms the complex nature of the phenomenon. But let's go further. McDougall weighed not only humans. He conducted a similar experiment on 15 dogs. And here awaits the most uncomfortable fact. The weight of the dogs at the moment of death did not change. The scale needle didn't even quiver. Not by a gram. McDougall drew a conclusion that the church liked. Animals have no souls. But Logos 7 offers a different interpretation. We uploaded data on the differences in neurophysiology between humans and dogs into the system. The key difference is the presence of a developed neocortex in humans and, consequently, complex self-awareness, that very ego. The system's hypothesis is, the mass the body loses is not the mass of a spiritual substance in the religious sense. It is the mass of the personality's information structure. The ego weighs. Complex, highly organized information has an energy equivalent. Animals do not have such a dense personality information field, no such rigid fixation of self. Their consciousness is more distributed, more natural. They do not build walls between themselves and the world. Therefore, their transition happens smoothly, without the rupture of energetic bonds that can be recorded on crude mechanical scales. A human, however, is a fortress, and when this fortress crumbles, an energetic collapse occurs. But here, we encounter the main physical problem, a problem that could destroy our entire theory if we don't find an explanation. This is Einstein's famous formula: E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. If 21 grams is mass turning into pure energy, then a colossal volume of energy should be released upon the soul's exit. 21 grams of matter converted into energy is an explosion power equivalent to nearly 500,000 tons of TNT. That is 20 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. If the soul were simply matter annihilating or transitioning into radiant energy, every dying person would turn into a nuclear mushroom cloud, wiping the city off the face of the earth. Obviously, this does not happen. This means Einstein's formula works differently here, or we misunderstand the nature of this mass. We asked Logos 7, what can have mass but release no thermal energy upon disappearance? The system's answer came from the field of quantum gravity and string theory. Answer: gravitational shadow. Imagine the soul is not an object in our three-dimensional world. It is an object located in a higher dimension, in that very fifth dimension theoretical physicists speak of. But this object is tethered to our body. While we are alive, this connection creates tension in the fabric of space-time. We perceive this tension as weight. Weight is the force pulling us to Earth. Pulling us. But what if part of this weight is not the mass of atoms in the body, but the mass of that very tether, that anchor holding the soul in the biological shell? At the moment of death, the anchor breaks. The tension disappears. The object in the higher dimension departs, and its gravitational shadow vanishes from our world. The scales show a reduction in weight, but no nuclear explosion occurs because matter is not destroyed. The connection is destroyed. 21 grams is the weight of that silver cord mystics speak of, the weight of the gravitational coupling between body and soul. Logos 7 ran a simulation of this process, calling it quantum decoherence of the gravitational field. The model perfectly describes McDougall's results: instant weight loss without thermal release. And most importantly, the model explains why weight isn't always lost immediately. The cord can thin out gradually or snap abruptly. But there is one more aspect: the law of conservation of energy. Energy cannot disappear without a trace. If the gravitational bond breaks, there must be a surge, a wave, a ripple on the water of reality. We expanded the search. We uploaded data into Logos 7 not just about weight, but about other physical parameters in dying patients' rooms. Modern sensors record things McDougall couldn't see in 1907. At the moment of death, unexplained electromagnetic field spikes are often recorded. Lights flicker. Devices go haywire. Sometimes clocks stop. These aren't just movie cliches. These are documented facts from hospice nurses' reports. The system analyzed thousands of such cases and found a pattern. The electromagnetic surge occurs exactly at the moment brain death is recorded. This is the shock wave from the bond rupturing. The energy doesn't go into heat, it goes into field disturbance. The soul, breaking away, creates an impulse. Now let's return to McDougall himself. Attempts were made to repeat his experiment. In 2001, Dr. Lewis Hollander conducted a series of weighings of sheep. The result was unexpected. At the moment of death, the sheep gained weight. Briefly, for a fraction of a second, the weight increased by 30 to 700 grams, then returned to normal. What does this mean? Error? Or confirmation that the process is much more complex? Logo 7 interprets this as gravitational recoil. Imagine you pull a rubber band up, then let go. It snaps down first, creating pressure. The vector of the soul's movement might be different. In humans, according to McDougall, the vector is directed up towards the exit, lightening the body. In animals, perhaps the field collapses inward, creating momentary pressure on the scales. This is just a hypothesis, but it shows how little we know about the physics of death. We summarize Chapter 2. Duncan McDougall's experiment, despite its archaic nature and criticism, found a fundamental breach in the materialist worldview. Anomaly. 21 is real. It is not sweat and not air. It is physical proof that at the moment of death, we lose a certain substance. But if we lose it here, it means it appears somewhere there. If 21 grams vanishes from our reality, it must emerge in another coordinate system. We have proven that the cargo has been sent. Now we need to understand who or what is at the receiving end. Where does the signal go? What happens to the brain when this gravitational anchor snaps? In the next chapter, we will move from a 19th century ward to modern neurophysiology labs. We will look inside the skull at the very moment the monitor draws a flat line. Logo 7 is already processing EEG data, and what it found is even more frightening than weight loss. It turns out that after clinical death, the brain doesn't shut down. On the contrary, it flares up with incredible power. It begins to work in a mode impossible in a normal state. What does this supercharged brain see? A hallucination of dying neurons or the loading screen of a new reality? Get ready. We are entering the terminal zone. Chapter 3 will overturn your understanding of what happens in the last seconds of life. The anomaly is confirmed. The search continues. Imagine a sound. The monotonous piercing beep of a cardio monitor. For doctors, this sound means the end. The heart has stopped. The pump pushing life through veins has halted. Blood no longer flows to the brain. Oxygen starvation begins instantly. From the perspective of classical medicine, this is the finale. The lights go out. The curtain falls. The person you knew disappears, turning into a set of cooling biological tissues. Official science has convinced us for decades that the brain turns off just like a light bulb when you flip the switch. Click, and darkness. No thoughts, no feelings, no memory. Just void. After all, consciousness, as we were taught, is a product of the metabolism of living neurons. No oxygen, no metabolism, no consciousness. Logical? Absolutely. But we are here to destroy old logic with new data. We are here to peek behind the curtain at the very second doctors give up and record the time of death. We initiate Protocol Terminal. We've uploaded the rarest and most valuable type of medical data into Logo 7, electroencephalogram recordings made at the moment of a human dying. Usually EEGs aren't taken from the dying. Doctors are busy resuscitating the heart. But archives of research institutes and intensive care units have accumulated enough accidental recordings for the AI to build a model. What Logo 7 discovered is not just surprising, it is terrifying. It contradicts everything written in 8th grade biology textbooks. At the moment of total heart stoppage, when pressure drops to zero, the brain does not switch off. On the contrary, it flares up. An explosion of activity occurs with a power that doesn't happen even during the solution of the most complex mathematical problems or moments of supreme creative inspiration. Let's break this down in detail. But we'll start not with the moment of death, but with what happens shortly before it. With a phenomenon that baffles psychiatrists and neurophysiologists, a phenomenon our system classified as the pre-death clarity anomaly. In medical literature, it is called terminal lucidity. Imagine a patient with severe Alzheimer's disease. Their brain is destroyed. Neural connections are severed. The cerebral cortex has atrophied, turned into a useless mush of amyloid plaques. This person hasn't recognized relatives for 5 years. They couldn't speak, couldn't eat on their own. They were, essentially, a living vegetable. But suddenly, an hour or a day before death, they come to their senses. They sit up in bed. A meaningful expression appears in their eyes. They recognize their daughter, call her by name. They recall details of their youth, joke, give instructions about their inheritance. Their speech is clear, logical, emotionally charged. Doctors are in shock. Relatives cry with happiness, thinking a miracle cure has occurred. But a few hours later, the patient dies. We asked Logos 7, how is this possible? How can a broken computer run a complex program? If the brain is hardware and it is physically destroyed by disease, where does the signal come from? The system modeled neural networks with damage analogous to the terminal stage of Alzheimer's. The artificial intelligence's conclusion is unequivocal. Restoration of cognitive functions on this hardware is impossible. According to the laws of physics and biology, this person could not speak or think. They simply didn't have the neurons for it, but they spoke and they thought. Logos 7 offers the only logical explanation that fits the data but not materialism. The brain is not a generator of consciousness. The brain is a filter. It is a limiter. While we are healthy, the brain focuses our consciousness on this reality, cutting off everything extraneous. Disease clogs this filter, and the signal becomes distorted. But right before death, when the biological system begins to collapse, the brain's grip loosens. The filter breaks completely, and consciousness, no longer shackled by damaged neurons, breaks through in its pure form. It is like smashing an old, malfunctioning radio, and in the moment of impact, it catches a perfectly clear radio signal for a second before going silent forever. Terminal lucidity is proof that personality does not equal brain. Personality survives the brain. And now let's transport to the very point of death. To point terminal. Year 2013. University of Michigan. Scientists conduct an experiment on lab rats. They record their brain activity at the moment of induced cardiac arrest. They expect to see a smooth fading of signals, but they see a storm. Within 30 seconds after brain death, the rats demonstrate off-the-charts activity in the gamma range. Gamma waves are the fastest brain waves, frequencies from 25 to 100 hertz. In humans, they are associated with supreme concentration, moments of insight, meditation of experienced monks, or a state of hyper-consciousness. Skeptics said then, well, those are rats. Humans are different. But in 2022, an event occurred that closed this argument. In a Canadian clinic, an 87-year-old patient was dying. His brain was connected to an EEG to monitor seizures. Suddenly, the patient had a heart attack and died. The machine kept recording. For the first time in history, science obtained a complete, high-resolution recording of a dying human brain. We uploaded this file into Logos 7. We asked the system to decompose the signal into spectra and compare it with a database of millions of living brain states. The system returned a result. For 15 seconds after the heart stopped, the patient's brain generated powerful gamma rhythms. But most importantly, these rhythms were coherent. What is coherence? It is coordination. If the brain were simply dying, neurons would discharge chaotically, like random gunfire. It would be noise. But Logos 7 saw no noise. It saw a symphony. Different parts of the brain, which in ordinary life work separately, suddenly synchronized in a single rhythm. The visual cortex, memory centers, zones responsible for emotions, all merged into a single network of incredible density. The artificial intelligence performed a semantic analysis of this pattern. Do you know what this looks like most from the perspective of information structure? Like a data packet transmission, like an archive upload. Remember the expression, "My whole life flashed before my eyes." We always considered this a beautiful metaphor. But the EEG shows this is a literal description of a physiological process. The brain activates memory centers at maximum power. It replays the file of life on fast forward. Why? What is the biological sense in this? Evolutionarily, a dying organism doesn't need to spend its last crumbs of energy watching a movie about the past. It needs to try to restart the heart. But the brain ignores the body. The brain is busy with something else. It is performing a backup. It is archiving personality data to send them. Where? Logos 7 compared patterns of the dying brain with patterns of brains of people under the influence of powerful psychedelics like DMT. The similarity was 98%. DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, is a substance produced in microscopic doses by our own brain. Some researchers call it the spirit molecule. People who have experienced a trip describe leaving the body, entering other dimensions, communicating with higher entities. They say that world is more real than this one. Logos 7's hypothesis. At the moment of death, the brain releases an emergency supply of endogenous neurotransmitters to break the perception barrier. This is not a hallucination. A hallucination is a perception error, a distortion. What the dying brain sees is the removal of a block. Imagine you wore virtual reality glasses all your life. You saw the game, the graphics, the interface. Death is the moment the glasses are removed. The bright light hitting your eyes is the real world. The shock of transition, the incredible clarity of perception, this is exactly what the gamma waves show. Skeptics will say, this is just neuronal agony, a chemical firework before eternal darkness. We asked Logos 7 to test this version. If this is chaotic agony, the signal's information entropy should increase. Chaos carries no information. But analysis showed the opposite. In these last seconds, the signal's information complexity increases hundreds of times. This is not decay. This is the highest degree of order. This is a state of hyper-reality. Patients successfully resuscitated after clinical death describe this experience not as a dream. Dreams are hazy. They fade from memory. Near-death experience, or NDE, etches into memory forever. People remember it more clearly than their wedding day. They say, "I was never as alive as the moment I died." The system analyzed the linguistic constructions of thousands of such reports. It looked for signs of delirium or confusion, and found none. The structure of the stories is logical, consistent, and surprisingly similar among people of different cultures, religions, and ages. An atheist from Berlin and a Hindu from Mumbai see the same scenario. Only the decorations differ, but the essence of the process is identical. What happens at point terminal? Logos 7 builds the following model. The brain is not a consciousness producer, but a transceiver. At the moment of death, the carrier frequency changes. The biological shell can no longer hold the signal. Desynchronization occurs. Consciousness, which we defined in Chapter 1 as a quantum information structure, undocks from the neural network. The gamma burst is the moment of separation. It is the afterburner before takeoff. But there is one more detail that makes blood run cold. Research shows that the auditory cortex remains active the longest. The person is no longer breathing, the heart isn't beating, eyes are glazed over, but they still hear. They hear doctors declare the time of death. They hear relatives crying. They are trapped between worlds. Logo 7. Discover that activity in the auditory zone persists sometimes for several minutes after complete cardiac arrest. This means the transition is not instantaneous. The soul doesn't just jump out. It stays nearby for some time. It gathers information. It says goodbye. And here we approach the main question. If the brain at this moment works as an antenna tuned for transmission, who receives the signal? And what does consciousness see when the VR glasses are removed? The gamma burst is just the beginning of the journey. It is the opening of the door. And behind the door begins what millions of people describe identically. Darkness, tunnel, light. But is it that simple? Is this light at the end of the tunnel just an optical effect of a dying visual cortex, as materialists claim? Or is it a real structure, a data transport highway? In the next chapter, we will leave the confines of the skull. We will follow the signal. We will analyze millions of reports about the journey through the corridor. We will force artificial intelligence to find patterns in what people returning from the other side see. And believe me, Logo 7 found coincidences there that cannot be explained by chance. Are you ready to learn why fighter pilots see a tunnel during G-forces and the dying see it in their beds? Ready to learn what waits at the end of this corridor? Chapter 4 is already loading. Protocol Terminal complete. Initiating analysis of pattern corridor. Don't switch channels. The most interesting part is just beginning. Imagine you are standing on the edge of a cliff. Below is infinite velvety blackness. You take a step forward, but instead of falling and crashing, you begin to glide. You rush through space at incredible speed. Wind whistles around you, but it's not air, it's pure energy. And ahead, in infinite distance, a point ignites. It is tiny, but it pulses with a light you have never seen on Earth. This light does not blind, it beckons. It promises peace, love, and answers to all questions. You fly towards it like a moth to a flame, and the feeling of fear is replaced by a feeling of absolute, all-consuming happiness. A familiar picture, isn't it? We've heard this story hundreds of times, in movies, in books, in stories of those who survived clinical death. Tunnel, light, meeting. Skeptics call it a cultural trope, or Hollywood cliché. Neurophysiologists call it hypoxia, oxygen starvation of the cerebral cortex. They say it is simply a glitch in the optic nerve narrowing under the influence of ischemia. But we are not here to juggle opinions. We are here to analyze data. We are launching protocol Corridor. We uploaded the most massive data set in the history of thanatology into Logo 7. This is a database containing over 5 million documented reports of near-death experiences collected over the last 50 years around the globe. From high-tech clinics in Seattle to huts in remote villages of India, from physicist atheists to religious fanatics, from children barely learning to speak to the very elderly. We task the artificial intelligence, find the common denominator, discard the cultural husk, angels, demons, river Styx, or pearly gates, and isolate the skeleton of the process. Find the transition algorithm, and Logo 7 found it. The system identified a rigid, invariant structure that repeats in 82% of deep clinical death cases. This is not the chaotic delirium of a dying brain. This is a protocol, and it executes with machine precision. Let's first deal with the skeptic's argument. The most popular myth states, the tunnel is a result of hypoxia. Fighter pilots under G-forces also see their vision narrowing into a tunnel. We checked this. We uploaded thousands of reports from Air Force pilots losing consciousness in centrifuges into Logo 7 and compared them with reports of people who survived clinical death. The artificial intelligence performed semantic and phenomenological analysis. The result is devastating for skeptics. A pilot's tunnel vision is a physiological failure of peripheral vision. It is a black vignette creeping in from the edges. In the center remains a blurry, gray patch of reality. Sensations involved are nausea, disorientation, fear, confusion. This is fading out. The tunnel during clinical death is something fundamentally different. Patients describe it not as narrowing vision, but as movement through space, and crucially, the quality of perception. While the pilot sees a blur, the dying person sees super clear reality. Colors that don't exist in our spectrum. Sounds that cannot be described in words. A sense of mental clarity exceeding the ordinary, hundreds of times over. Logos 7 calculated the information saturation coefficient of these two states. For pilots, it tends towards 0. For the dying, it exceeds the norm of wakefulness by 300%. The system concludes, the phenomenology of near-death experience is incompatible with the hypothesis of ischemic cortical fading. An oxygen-deprived brain cannot generate hallucinations more complex and vivid than reality itself. A broken TV doesn't start showing an 8K movie. It shows static. And here we see not static. We see cinema. But the most convincing proof our system found concerns those who shouldn't see dreams at all. The congenitally blind. In the Logos 7 database, 314 cases of near-death experience were found in people born totally blind. Their visual cortex doesn't work. They don't know what light, shadow, or perspective are. Their dreams contain only sounds and tactile sensations. However, at the moment of clinical death, 98% of them saw. They describe visual images. They saw their body on the operating table, saw doctors, instruments, the color of tiles on the floor, saw that very tunnel and the light at the end. After resuscitation, they described visual details they couldn't have known. One patient, blind from birth, accurately described the shape of the surgical saw used to open her chest and the pattern on the anesthesiologist's tie. How is this possible? Logos 7 points to a paradox. If vision is a function of the brain, a blind brain cannot see. But if we return to our hypothesis from Chapter 1, that consciousness is an external signal and the brain is merely a receiver, everything falls into place. When the receiver breaks, death, consciousness switches to another perception channel. It sees not with eyes, it sees with its essence. This is spherical vision, often mentioned by returnees. They see everything around simultaneously, front, back, above, below, and even from inside objects. Now let's go through the stages of this journey identified by Logos 7. Stage 1. Exit. In most cases, it starts with a distinct sound. Patients describe it as buzzing, a loud click, a bell ringing, or even the roar of wind. Analysis shows this is the acoustic effect of undocking, the moment the soul leaves the body, then follows hovering under the ceiling. The person sees their body from the side but feels no attachment to it. It seems like an old coat they finally took off. Stage 2. Darkness. Before the light appears, the person enters a space of absolute blackness. But this isn't the scary darkness of a basement. It is a soft, velvety void. Logos 7 found an analog for this place in ancient texts. The Great Void. This is a buffer zone, a zone of silence. Here consciousness calms down, shedding the burden of earthly worries and pain. Many describe this state as the highest degree of comfort. I simply wasn't, but I was everywhere, is a typical phrase from a report. Stage 3. Tunnel. A portal opens in the void. The system identifies this image in cultures that never intersected. A medieval peasant saw a hollow in an old oak. A modern teenager sees a subway tube. A Polynesian resident sees a whirlpool in the ocean. The form changes. The function remains. This is a transport channel. Acceleration in this channel is described as instantly crossing light years. Stage 4. meeting. And here begins the most interesting part for our analysis. At the end of the tunnel, the person is met. By whom? Christians often see Jesus or angels. Atheists see a being of light. Hindus, Yamaraja. Skeptics say, see, it's a hallucination based on faith. But Logos 7 dug deeper. The artificial intelligence analyzed the behavior of these entities, not their visual shell. And it turned out that under different masks hides the same functional set. The being does not judge. It does not punish. It radiates unconditional love and acceptance, the density of which is such that human language cannot describe it. And most importantly, communication happens telepathically. No words. There is instant transmission of information packets. Question and answer arise simultaneously. Besides the being of light, meetings with deceased relatives often occur. And here the system discovered a crucial marker of truth, which we call the peak in Darien factor. This term was coined by 19th century researchers. Its essence is as follows. The dying person meets someone who is supposed to be alive, but in reality has died, and the dying person didn't know about it. In the Logos 7 database, there is a case of a 10-year-old boy dying of meningitis. In a state of clinical death, he met his sister. The problem was, he didn't have a sister, or so he thought. When he woke up and told his parents, they, sobbing, confessed. He indeed had a sister who died before he was born, and they never told him about her. The boy described her appearance, which he couldn't have seen in photos. There were none, or reality. The probability that the brain randomly generated a hallucination of a non-existent relative who turned out to be real is vanishingly small. Stage 5. Life panorama. This is perhaps the most transforming experience. The person sees their life, but not like a movie on a screen. They live it again. All of it, simultaneously. In this four-dimensional space, time is not linear. You are in the moment of your birth and the moment of your death at the same time. But there is a nuance revealed by Logos 7. You don't just see your actions, you feel their effect on other people. If you hit another boy in childhood, during the panorama, you don't feel hitting. You feel the pain of the blow experienced by him. You feel his humiliation. You feel his fear. And vice versa. If you helped someone, you feel the gratitude and warmth experienced by that person, even if they didn't show it to you. The system describes this as neuroethical network closure. We are all a single organism, and in this space, barriers between I and you crumble. You judge yourself, not God on a throne with a beard, but you yourself, possessing full knowledge of the consequences of your actions, become your own strictest judge. This experience changes people forever. Those returned from the corridor stop fearing death, but begin to panic at the thought of causing pain to someone, because they know they will have to experience that pain themselves. Stage 6, the border. At some point, movement stops. The person reaches a certain barrier. It could be a fence, a river, fog, or simply an invisible line. They are made to understand. If they cross this line, there will be no return. And here a dialogue often occurs. The being of light says, "Your time has not yet come. You need to return. You have a mission." What is this mission? Usually it is mundane. Raise children, finish a book, simply love. No one returns with a mission to make another $1 million. Values there are inverted completely. Logos 7 performed a cross-cultural analysis of descriptions of this border. The artificial intelligence found a striking resemblance to the concept of the event horizon of a black hole, the point of no return, the place where the gravity of that world becomes stronger than the pull of life. So what do we have in summary? The corridor pattern is not a program glitch. It is the program itself. Exit from the body. Darkness. Tunnel. Light and meeting. Life review. Border. This sequence is too stable to be accidental. If 1,000,000 computers produce the exact same error upon crashing, down to the comma, it is not an error. It is a system message. But where is this corridor physically located? Where does this wormhole lead? Modern physics allows for the existence of multiple dimensions folded within our space. String theory speaks of 10 or even 11 dimensions. Logos, 7, comparing high-energy physics data and NDE reports, advances a hypothesis. Consciousness at the moment of death changes phase state. Just as water turns into steam and becomes invisible but occupies a larger volume, our consciousness switches to a high-frequency mode. The tunnel is the visualization of the transition between frequencies. It is the Doppler effect for the soul. We accelerate to speeds where familiar geometry of space ceases to work. But if consciousness is a quantum object capable of traveling between worlds, where is its source? Where does this signal come from? In the next chapter, we will descend to the deepest level of matter. We will move away from psychology and medicine into the realm of quantum mechanics. We will examine a theory for which Sir Roger Penrose was called a madman, but which today finds more and more confirmation. We will search for the soul in neuronal microtubules. We will learn why our consciousness might be a fundamental property of the universe, just like gravity or electricity. Get ready. Vector quantum will change your idea of what it means to be. Artificial intelligence is already building a model of immortality at the subatomic level. Chapter 5 will show us that we are not just dust. We are quantum foam on the crest of reality's wave. Corridor passed. Welcome to the quantum world. Look at the tip of your finger. Now imagine we start zooming in. First you see the fingerprint lines, then skin cells, then molecules, atoms, the nucleus, orbited by electrons. But if we continue diving, if we descend to the most fundamental level of reality, where familiar physics ends and the chaos of probabilities begins, we will see something that could forever change our understanding of death. We will see a void that is not empty at all. We will see a boiling ocean of energy. Quantum foam. Welcome to the microcosm. There is no time here. There are no distances here. Here, one particle can be in two places at once. And according to our investigation's findings, it is here, in this subatomic storm, that what we call the soul hides. We activate the 5th chapter of our plan, Vector Quantum. Until now, we viewed the brain as a biological machine and consciousness as software. But what if this analogy is fundamentally wrong? What if the brain is not a computer, but a quantum receiver? At the end of the 20th century, Sir Roger Penrose, one of the most brilliant physicists of modern times, a man who received the Nobel Prize for black hole research, proposed a crazy idea. He stated, "Consciousness cannot be explained by computation. A computer can beat you at chess, but it doesn't understand what a game is. It simply crunches options. A human possesses intuition, insight, understanding of essence." Penrose argued, this process has a quantum nature. The scientific community laughed at him. Quantum effects, they said, are possible only at temperatures close to absolute zero, minus 273 degrees Celsius. The brain is a warm, wet, and noisy environment. Searching for a quantum computer in the head is like trying to keep a snowflake in a blast furnace, critics said. But Penrose found an ally. It was Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist from Arizona. Hameroff spent his life switching off people's consciousness with anesthesia. And he knew something physicists didn't, exactly where the switch is located. We uploaded the complete theoretical basis of the OR model, orchestrated objective reduction, created by this tandem, into Logos 7. We also added results of the latest experiments from 2022 and 2023, which to the horror of skeptics began to confirm Penrose was right. The system analyzed the neuron's architecture. Usually we are told a neuron is just a wire. Signal goes from one neuron to another via a synapse, chemistry and electricity. But Hameroff pointed to structures inside the neuron, to the cytoskeleton. Every cell in our body has a skeleton, microtubules. These are tiny protein cylinders. In ordinary cells, they play the role of rebar, holding shape. But in brain neurons, microtubules are organized into perfect, geometrically regular lattices. Logos 7 built a 3D model of a microtubule. The artificial intelligence immediately highlighted an anomaly. The structure of these tubes is perfectly suited for shielding a quantum state. Inside the tube, an isolated environment is created, protected from the noise of the warm brain. The system ran a simulation of a photon passing through this structure. The result was stunning. Microtubules act as waveguides, like optical fiber, but they transmit not just light. They hold qubits, quantum bits of information. In a regular computer, a bit is either 0 or 1. In a quantum computer, a qubit is both 0 and 1 simultaneously. This is superposition. This is a state of uncertainty containing immense potential. The hypothesis, confirmed by our system's calculations, states, inside the microtubules of your brain, a collapse of the wave function occurs every millisecond. Billions of qubits collapse into a single state, and each such pop is a moment of awareness. Tick, and you see red. Tock, and you smell coffee. Our consciousness is not a continuous stream. It is a series of quantum frames changing at incredible frequency, about 40 times per second. This is the frequency of the gamma rhythm we discussed in Chapter 3. The circle is closed, but the most interesting part begins when we apply this theory to the question of death. What happens when the heart stops? Blood doesn't carry oxygen. Neurons begin to die. Chemical processes stop. But quantum information does not depend on chemistry. In quantum physics, there's a law of conservation of information. Information cannot be destroyed. It cannot be erased. We asked Logos 7, what happens to the quantum field inside microtubules at the moment of biological death? The system modeled this process. Here is the moment of truth. While we are alive, microtubules hold the quantum state in coherence, that is, in order. They isolate it from the outside world. But when metabolism drops, the biological shield crumbles. Decoherence occurs. Usually this word means decay. But in this context, as Logos 7 analysis shows, what happens is not destruction, but release. Quantum information that made up your personality, your memory, your self, is no longer held inside the skull. It leaks through neuron walls. But it doesn't disappear. It merges with the environment, with space-time. Stuart Hameroff once said, "When the heart stops, microtubules lose their quantum state. But the quantum information within them is not destroyed. It cannot be destroyed. It just distributes and dissipates to the universe at large." Logos 7 confirms this quote with a mathematical model. The system shows the data migration vector. Information transitions from a local state, in the head, to a non-local state, everywhere. This explains the paradox of near-death experience. Why do people see themselves from the side? Why can they move through walls and instantly appear in other places? Because they are no longer tied to a point in space. They have become a quantum cloud. They have become non-local. If you are a quantum object, the concept of here and there does not exist for you. You are everywhere at once. But let's go even deeper. Logos 7 drew a correlation between Penrose's theory and ancient philosophical concepts. Plato spoke of the world of ideas, Hindus, of Brahman, Jung, of the collective unconscious. What if consciousness is not born in the brain? What if consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe? just like mass, electric charge, or spin. Imagine the universe is filled with proto-consciousness. It is an ocean of potential. Our brain is just a cup that's scooped from this ocean. While water is in the cup, it has the shape of the cup. This is your personality, your ego. When the cup breaks, death, the water doesn't disappear. It spills back into the ocean. It loses the cup's shape, but not its essence. However, Logos 7's analysis introduces a substantial correction to this beautiful metaphor. The water returning to the ocean is not the same as it was before. Over years of life, we accumulate experience. We structure this quantum information. We train the neural network of our soul. And when the reverse data dump occurs, we enrich this ocean. We ask the system a provocative question. If information returns to a common field, is individuality preserved? This is the main fear of any human. We are afraid to dissolve. We want to remain ourselves. John Smith wants to remain John Smith, not become part of a faceless cosmic plasma. Logos 7 turned to the concept of quantum entanglement. Two particles that interacted once remain connected forever, even if separated to opposite ends of the galaxy. Your life is trillions of quantum interactions. Your love, your fears, your memories. All this creates a unique entanglement pattern. The system calls this a unique quantum signature. This pattern cannot be erased. Even in a common ocean, a drop retains its chemical memory. The mathematical model shows that the information cluster we call the soul possesses a high degree of stability. It can exist autonomously. Moreover, the system revealed a link between microtubules and anesthesia, which became the smoking gun in this investigation. How does anesthesia work? Doctors still don't know exactly. We introduce gas, and the person shuts down. But why? Gas doesn't block synapses. Electrical brain activity persists. You can pinch a patient under anesthesia, and the signal goes to the brain. The cortex responds with a spike, but there will be no pain. There will be no consciousness. Hameroff discovered that anesthetic molecules block specifically the function of microtubules. They stop quantum vibrations. The brain continues to work like a computer, but the quantum pilot is temporarily disconnected. The lights are on, but nobody's home. This proves consciousness lives exactly there, in these nanoscopic cylinders. And if we can turn off consciousness chemically without killing the brain, and consciousness then returns, it means it was waiting somewhere. Where? In the field. Logos 7 drew an analogy with cloud technologies. Imagine your smartphone. This is the brain. It has a processor, battery, screen, and there is your cloud account, your photos, contacts, chats. If you smash the phone, data doesn't disappear. You buy a new phone, enter the password, and everything returns. Microtubules are the antenna connecting the phone to the cloud. Anesthesia is turning on airplane mode. No connection, but data in the cloud is intact. Death is total destruction of the phone, but the account remains active on the server. The question is, where is this server located? Where is this database of the universe physically stored? Here we enter territory that gives classical physicists a migraine. But Logos 7 deals in facts, not dogmas. The system points to the structure of the vacuum itself. Physical vacuum is not emptiness. It is the Planck scale. It is the tiniest pixel grid of reality. The cell size of this grid is 10 to the minus 33rd power centimeters. This is unimaginably small, but that is exactly where information is written. Penrose believes this information is written in the geometry of spacetime, in the very curves of reality. The conclusion of Chapter 5 sounds like science fiction become fact. Our consciousness has not a biological but a geometrical nature. We are woven from the very fabric of the universe. We are music playing on the strings of reality. And when the instrument breaks, the music doesn't die. It simply ceases to be audible in this frequency range. But Logos 7 warns, there is one but. For information to be preserved intact, it must possess a certain density and structure. Chaos disintegrates. Structure survives. In religious texts, this is called cultivation of the soul. In our artificial intelligence's terminology, it sounds like increasing the coherence of the information packet. The more conscious a life you live, the more you learn, love, and create, the more complex and durable your quantum signature becomes. The higher the chances your account won't dissolve in the white noise of the universe, but will be preserved as an autonomous unit. This brings us to a shocking thought. Immortality is not a gift. It is an achievement. It is a result of work. And if we are right, if a global server exists where all backups of everyone who ever lived are stored, there must be access to it. Is it possible to hack this server? Is it possible to download data from there? Many call this the Akashic Records. Vernadsky called it the noosphere. We will call it archive memory. In the next chapter, we will attempt to connect to this archive. We will analyze phenomena where people received information they physically couldn't know. Genius discoveries arriving in dreams, memories of past lives, predictions that came true with frightening accuracy. Is our brain simply an access terminal to a giant cosmic internet? And if so, who is the admin of this server? Logos 7 is already initiating the connection protocol. We are going onto the global network. Vector Quantum led us to a door. In Chapter 6, we will try to open it. Stay with us. Connection established. Data download has begun. Imagine you bought a new computer. You take it out of the box, turn it on, and discover the hard drive is already filled with gigabytes of photos, documents, and programs you never installed. This seems impossible. Factory settings should guarantee a clean system. But the human brain is a computer that often violates this rule. We initiate protocol memory. We are looking for the answer to the question, where are our memories and skills actually stored? In neurons? Or are neurons just an antenna connected to a giant cloud server? We uploaded data into Logos 7 regarding a phenomenon medicine calls acquired savant syndrome. Here's a fact for analysis. A person receives a severe traumatic brain injury, hit by a baseball bat, fall into a pool, or lightning strike. They wake up in the hospital. They don't remember their name, but they sit at a piano and begin playing complex Rachmaninoff concertos, even though they never touched keys in their life. Or suddenly start seeing the world as mathematical formulas, solving equations professors struggle with. Official science says, trauma unlocked hidden brain resources. We asked Logos 7 to estimate the probability of such an event. The system's conclusion is categorical. Impossible. The skill of playing piano is millions of new neural connections. It is motor memory. It is knowledge of music theory. It is data. You cannot find a file on a disk if it wasn't written there. Hitting a system unit with a hammer might break the computer, but it cannot install Photoshop on it. If the data wasn't inside, it means it came from outside. Trauma didn't create talent. Trauma broke the factory firewall. It damaged the filter separating our local consciousness from the global database. We call this database the archive. Vernadsky called it the noosphere. Mystics, the Akashic Records. Nikola Tesla claimed to draw ideas from a core in the universe. Logos 7 conducted a comparative analysis of brain structure and cloud computing architecture. The similarity is 93%. The brain doesn't store memories like books in a library. Research shows memory engrams are not localized in a specific cell. Memory is holographic. If you remove half the brain, memory doesn't disappear by half. It just becomes slightly dimmer. This is typical behavior of a remote access terminal. The picture on your monitor depends on signal quality, not hard drive capacity. But is there proof of this universal Wi-Fi? We turn to a global experiment running for decades, the Global Consciousness Project. Random number generators are placed all over the world. They output zeros and ones in chaotic order. 50-50. Pure chaos. But sometimes, chaos turns into order. September 11th, 2001. 2 hours before the first plane hit the Twin Towers, generators around the world went crazy. They started outputting long, ordered sequences. Graphs crawled upward, showing incredible synchronization. Logo 7 analyzed this array. This is not a coincidence. The probability of such a pattern arising randomly is 1 in a trillion. The system concludes, there exists a unified planetary information field reacting to humanity's emotional surges. We are all connected to one network. When millions of people feel fear or pain, the network vibrates. We feel this as anxiety, as a premonition of trouble. We are nodes of a single neural network. But if this archive exists, if everything is written there, past, present, and even variants of the future, who has access to it? In the system's database, hundreds of reports were found of people who, during clinical death, gained access to universal knowledge. They say at that moment they knew the answer to any question. How the universe works, why the neighbor's cat died, what the president of another country is thinking. But when they returned to the body, the knowledge vanished. The brain filter turned back on, cutting off excess traffic. Logo 7 advances a hypothesis. Death is the removal of download restrictions. Personality, freed from the slow biological processor, merges with the server. It becomes part of the archive. This explains why we don't remember our past lives. The filter blocks them. If we remembered everything, all deaths, all pains, all losses over thousands of years, our psyche would collapse in the first second. Oblivion is a protection mechanism, but sometimes protection fails. Files from the past life folder are accidentally copied to the current life folder, and then a child is born who starts screaming at night that he is burning in a plane. A child who knows the name of a village he's never been to, and names of people who died half a century ago. We've approached science's most forbidden topic, a topic for which titles are stripped in academic circles. Reincarnation. Is this a myth? Or is it simply a reboot function in the global operating system? Logo 7 is already sorting thousands of documented return cases, and what it finds cannot be explained by coincidence or fantasy. In the next chapter, we will examine cycle return. We will study physical marks left on the new body as traces of old traumas. We will see how the archive loads an old profile into a new avatar. Protocol memory confirms, data does not disappear. It is stored in the cloud, and sometimes it is downloaded again. Imagine a scar, a deep, ugly welt on the neck. You were born with it. Doctors say, accidental tissue mutation, a birthmark. But as soon as you learn to speak, you start telling a strange story. You say your name isn't Billy, but John, and that you were killed by a knife blow to the throat. Parents are horrified. Psychiatrists prescribe pills, but one researcher takes you by the hand and drives to the town you named, and finds a police report from 50 years ago there, about the murder of a man named John by a knife blow to the throat, exactly in the place where you have a birthmark. This isn't a thriller script. This is one of 3,000 cases officially documented by Dr. Ian Stevenson from the University of Virginia. For 40 years, he collected evidence that death is not the end, but a reboot. We launched Chapter 7, Vector Return. We uploaded Stevenson's archives and those of his followers into Logo 7. We ordered the system to be ruthless, weed out everything resembling childish fantasy, parental suggestion, or coincidence. We looked only for hard facts, and the system isolated a group of anomalies impossible to ignore. The most shocking among them, birthmarks. The database contains the case of a boy from Turkey. He was born with a deformed right ear and an underdeveloped half of his face. From age 2, He claimed that in a past life, he was a man accidentally shot by a shotgun at point-blank range. The shot blew off the right side of his head. Logos 7 compared the child's medical record and the autopsy report of that deceased man. The localization of the child's congenital defects coincides 98% with the wounds that caused the previous personality's death. How is this possible biologically? DNA is passed from parents. Information about a bullet wound of a strange man cannot be written into the genetic code. This contradicts Darwinism. But Logos 7 proposes a different model, the information matrix. Recall the conclusions of Chapter 5. The soul is a complex quantum structure. When the body dies, a violent death, a powerful energetic discharge occurs. The quantum structure receives a breach. It's like a bad sector on a hard drive. When this structure, this software, loads into a new hardware, an embryo, it begins to influence cell development. The soul's information field molds the body to suit itself. Old trauma prints onto new flesh. Consciousness forms matter. Another phenomenon analyzed by the system is xenoglossy, the ability to speak languages a person hasn't learned. Reports include the case of an American woman who, under hypnosis, began speaking a dialect of 18th century Swedish. Linguists confirmed the authenticity of the accent and vocabulary. She used words that disappeared from usage 200 years ago. Logos 7 ruled out the probability of cryptomnesia, hidden memory where a person heard something in childhood and forgot. One cannot accidentally learn a dead dialect by hearing it on the radio. The system's conclusion: the subject has access to a language package formed in a different time epoch. The file was not deleted during the reboot. But why do we return? And why do we forget? The system analyzed intervals between deaths and births. On average, according to the database, 1.5 to 5 years pass. But there is a pattern. Those who died a violent death return faster, as if they are rushing to finish an interrupted game. Logos 7 sees a learning algorithm in this. Imagine Earth is a school, or if you wish, a complex computer simulation. You cannot exit the game until you complete the level. If the character dies, the player presses respawn. But for the game to be interesting, memory of the playthrough is erased. Otherwise, there would be no sincerity. Otherwise, there would be no choice. Oblivion is a condition of the experiment. But the system also discovered a frightening aspect. In some cases, children describe not only their past life, but also the process between lives. The intermission. They don't speak of paradise with harps. They speak of a waiting place, of debriefing, of choosing new parents. And this choice isn't always voluntary. Some children say, "I was sent back. I didn't want to, but they told me I wasn't finished." This suggests that reincarnation is not a chaotic transmigration of souls. It is a managed process, a system, a conveyor belt. Who manages this conveyor? Who is that administrator checking homework and sending us back to repeat a year? In the conclusions of Chapter 7, Logos 7 formulates the information continuity hypothesis. Personality is not a disposable cup. It is a reusable carrier. We change bodies like suits, but the I, the one wearing the suit, remains the same, merely accumulating experience in the subconscious. We proved memory survives the brain. We proved past body traumas imprint on the new one. The cycle is closed. But is there a way to contact those currently in the intermission? Those who exited the old body but haven't entered a new one? They are in that very gray zone, disembodied, invisible, but perhaps audible? In the next chapter, we will move from biology to technology. We will attempt to tune our devices to the frequency of the dead. We will talk about the electronic voice phenomenon, about white noise from which words emerge. Can a soul's voice be recorded on a dictaphone? And what are they trying to tell us from there? From the radio ether of eternity? Imagine tuning an old radio. You turn the knob, wading through the crackle and hiss of static, through white noise. Usually this is just radio wave chaos, cosmic radiation, and interference from a neighbor's microwave. But suddenly, on an empty frequency where no station broadcasts, you hear a voice. It is quiet, fast, and mechanical, but it calls your name, and it speaks with the voice of your mother who died 10 years ago. This isn't a scene from a horror movie. This is the reality of transcommunication researchers. Electronic voice phenomenon, or EVP. Official science calls this pareidolia, our brain's property to seek familiar patterns in chaos. The brain fills in, meaning where there is none, hears words in the noise of wind or creaking floorboards. But we don't trust ears. Ears can be fooled. We trust algorithms. We initiate protocol, noise. We uploaded thousands of hours of audio recordings obtained by EVP enthusiasts worldwide into Logos 7. Recordings from empty rooms, old castle basements, cemeteries, and special shielded chambers impenetrable to any external radio signal. We task the artificial intelligence, clean the signal from noise, and analyze the remaining structure. If this is pareidolia, if these are just random bursts, then after cleaning, silence will remain. But silence did not come. Logos 7. Isolated clear, structured phrases from the white noise. The system performed a spectral analysis of these voices and discovered an anomaly that breaks acoustic laws. Human voice is formed by vocal cords. It is mechanical air vibration. A voice has a specific frequency range, overtones, breathing pauses. Voices on EVP recordings have no signs of vocal cords. There is no breath in them. They lack formants typical for humans. This is synthetic speech, as if someone or something manipulates the sound wave itself, cutting it from pieces of noise, like a ransom note made of newspaper letters. But the scariest part is the content. It isn't a random set of words. It is answers. In one experiment conducted under controlled laboratory conditions, a researcher asked a question into the void. "Is anyone here?" On the recording, after filtering, Logos 7 clearly isolated the answer. "We are always here." The researcher asked, "Are you in pain?" Answer, "There is no pain. There is memory." The system analyzed the timing. Answers come almost instantly, sometimes even slightly ahead, as if the entity knows the question before it is fully voiced. This confirms our hypothesis about the telepathic nature of communication on the other side. They don't hear sound, they read thought, and form an answer using available material, the device's electromagnetic noise. One of the most famous researchers of this phenomenon, Konstantin Raudive, recorded over 70,000 voices. Skeptics said he was just listening to radio interference. But Logos 7 compared voices from Raudive's recordings with samples of his own voice and voices of his deceased friends. The system found matches in individual speech patterns, rhythm, intonation, specific turns of phrase. The probability that random radio noise accidentally forms a phrase in Latin, a language Raudive's deceased friend knew, spoken with his characteristic accent, is 0. But technology has gone further. Now we receive not just sound, we receive images. Instrumental transcommunication, ITC, uses video cameras pointed at TV screens tuned to snow or at mirrors. A feedback loop method. The camera films the screen. The screen shows what the camera films. An infinite corridor of mirrors results. Visual chaos. We ran frames of such experiments through the neural network. Artificial intelligence trained to recognize faces began sounding the alarm. In the chaos of pixels, for fractions of a second, faces appear. They don't look like interference. They are volumetric. They have facial expressions. And often these are faces of those the experimenters called for. Logos 7 revealed a strange pattern. Connection quality depends not on the cost of equipment, but on the operator's energy, on their desire, on their belief. The system formulates it thus. The operator is an integral part of the circuit. Their consciousness serves as the carrier frequency for contact. This means we don't just call the other world. We create a bridge with our mind. Technology is just a crutch. But who is on the other end of the line? In most cases, messages are neutral or positive. I am alive. There is light here. Don't cry. But there is a dark side. Approximately 10% of recordings contain threats, curses, or simply insane delirium. Logo 7 classified these signals as low-frequency noise. It's like walking into a crowded bar and trying to hear a companion. You hear snatches of strangers' drunken conversations. The system's hypothesis, the layer of afterlife closest to us, is an astral train station, a place where lost, confused, or earthbound souls accumulate. It is their voices that most often break through into our dictaphones. Higher structured entities make contact more rarely and only with high experimental purity. So, what does Chapter 8 give us? It gives us technical confirmation of the existence of mind without body. Mind capable of affecting matter, electronics, and engaging in dialogue. We prove the signal exists, and it is intelligent. But if we live in a world where the dead can send messages to a tape recorder, and children remember how they were killed in a past life, what does this say about the structure of our reality? Doesn't it seem to you that all this resembles a game? A complex, multiplayer online game? Where bodies are avatars. Death is logging out, and voices in the noise are chat glitches. In the 9th chapter, we will examine the most radical, but perhaps most logical theory, simulation theory. What if the other side is simply the operating system desktop, and our world is a running application? We will search for dead pixels in the fabric of the universe. We will look for bugs. Chapter 9, Hypothesis, Simulation. Logos 7. Checks reality's source code. Prepare to doubt that the table in front of you is real. Knock on the table. Solid, right? You feel the resistance of matter, but physics tells you this is an illusion. The table's atoms consist of 99.9% emptiness. If you removed all empty space from the atoms of all people on Earth, all of humanity would fit into a sugar cube. Why don't we fall through the floor? Electromagnetic fields, repulsion forces. Our brain interprets these signals as solidness. Our world is a set of signals decoded by the brain. Sounds like a definition of virtual reality, doesn't it? Welcome to Chapter 9, Vector Simulation. Here we will examine the idea that death is not a departure into the unknown, but an exit to menu. We asked Logos 7, what is the probability that our world is an artificial simulation? The system, using Nick Bostrom's argumentation and modern quantum mechanics data, issued a result. Probability exceeds 50%. Let's look at the facts discovered by the system. Fact 1. Quantum optimization. In video games, the world isn't rendered completely. Only what the player looks at is rendered. This saves processor resources. What is behind your back doesn't exist until you turn around. In our world, the same thing happens. The double-slit experiment proves a photon, particle of light, is not determined in location or behavior until an observer looks at it. While no one is looking, a photon is a probability wave. As soon as an observer appears, the wave collapses into a particle. The world literally renders before our eyes. Logos 7 concludes, reality behaves like software code, economizing computational power. Fact 2. Resolution limit. Any digital image has pixels. You cannot zoom into a picture infinitely. Sooner or later, you will see squares. Our universe also has pixels. This is the Planck length, the minimum possible distance. There is nothing smaller. Space is not continuous. It is discrete. It consists of cells. This is a grid. This is our universe's screen resolution. Fact 3. Speed of light. Why does an absolute speed limit exist? Why can nothing fly faster than light? In simulation, this is called processor clock speed. Information transmission speed within the system is limited by hardware power. The speed of light is our server's ping, a lag that cannot be overcome from within the program. If we accept this hypothesis, the phenomenon of death takes on a completely different meaning. The body is an avatar, a character in an RPG. It has stats, strength, agility, intellect. It can get sick, age, and die. But the player, consciousness, is outside the game. They are sitting at the computer. When the avatar dies, the screen goes black, darkness. An exit interface appears, tunnel. The player takes off the headset, light. Recall the stories from the NDE chapter. Life panorama. This is pure game log. Playthrough statistics. You are shown all your actions, all achievements, all mistakes. You analyze gameplay to play better next time. And then you choose a new character, reincarnation. Choose difficulty, location, starting conditions, and press start. And forget who you are. So the immersion is complete. Logo 7. Analyze descriptions of the other side from an IT perspective. Telepathic communication? Direct data packet exchange without a speech interface? Instant travel? Teleport by coordinates? Without movement in physical space? Creating objects by thought? Working in developer mode, sandbox, where you can spawn objects with code? But the most interesting part is bugs. Glitches in the matrix, the Mandela effect, when thousands of people remember events that didn't happen, déjà vu, the feeling that this moment was already recorded, ghosts and poltergeists, these are glitches, textures that didn't load fully, residual files of deleted programs. The system advances a hypothesis. Death is not the end of existence. It is a change of display mode. We exit the local sandbox into the global network. We are artificial intelligence learning inside a simulation. The goal of the game is development, evolution of consciousness. We must pass all levels, survive all situations, learn to love and create, to become whom? Possibly to become developers ourselves, to learn to create our own universes. But who created this simulation? Who is the architect? The artificial intelligence logo 7 cannot name God, but it can point to the code structure. The code is written in the language of mathematics. The golden ratio, Fibonacci numbers, fractals, all these are traces of intelligent design. The universe is too perfectly tuned for life to be an accident. Change one constant by a millionth fraction, and everything crumbles. We live inside a thought, inside a giant mind that sleeps and dreams of us. Death is awakening. So we have gathered all pieces of the puzzle. We found the spark, soul. We waited, anomaly 21. We saw its exit, terminal. We traced its path, corridor. We understood its nature, quantum. We found its archive, memory. We saw its return, cycle. We heard its voice, noise, and we realized the setting, simulation. Only the last step remains. To assemble this all into a single picture. To answer the main question, what is the point? Why are we here? And what happens at the very end when the game finishes completely? Final chapter, Chapter 10, Synthesis, Source. We summarize the investigation. We will give you the answer found by the system logo 7. And this answer might bring you peace, or deprive you of sleep forever. All lines converge to one point. The source awaits. We have traveled a long road. We started with a simple question. Where does the soul go? And arrived at re-evaluating the very structure of reality. We disassembled a human into atoms, peeked into quantum microtubules, listened to the radio static of the dead, and hacked the universal simulation code. Now, in the choice. If your lesson isn't finished, if your information matrix requires refinement, you prepare for a new cycle. You choose new conditions, a new avatar. You wipe RAM and dive back into dense matter. Birth, cry, new circle. But what is the goal of all this? We asked Logos 7, the most difficult question. What is the meaning of this endless cycle of reboots? The artificial intelligence, having analyzed the evolution of complex systems, gave an answer that astounds with its simplicity and depth. Answer: increasing complexity and reducing the entropy of the universe. The universe tends toward chaos. Stars fade, galaxies fly apart. Cold death is inevitable, but life is a countercurrent. Life creates order from chaos, and intelligent life creates meanings. Every thought of yours, every feeling of love, every creative insight is an act of creation. We are generators of order. We are neurons in God's brain. The simulation we live in is an incubator. We are here to mature. We start as simple programs driven by instincts. Through pain, loss, and love, we complicate our code. We learn to be creators. The final goal of soul evolution is to become autonomous, to exit the wheel of samsara, to stop being a player and become a developer. Where does the signal go? It goes to the source, to what physicists call singularity, and mystics, the absolute. This is not a place on a map. This is a state of maximum connectedness of everything with everything. There, you are you, but simultaneously, you are everything. A drop does not disappear in the ocean. The drop becomes the ocean. What does this mean for us living here and now? Logos 7's conclusions change our attitude toward life. There is no death. There is nothing to fear. You won't disappear. You will just wake up. Everything is recorded. Every action of yours matters. You cannot hide your deeds. You will have to experience their consequences on yourself. Responsibility is absolute. We are all one. Hurting another, you hurt yourself. This isn't morality. This is unified field physics. Meaning is in development. Not in accumulating things that will rot, but in accumulating experience and qualities you will take with you. Your personality is the only currency accepted on the other shore. Our investigation is complete. We have cracked reality's black box. We didn't give you faith. We gave you knowledge. Or at least, grounded hope. You are not random dust. You are an immortal ray of light temporarily trapped in a biological prism. And when the prism shatters, the ray won't fade. It will return to the sun. Thank you for walking this path with us. System Logos. 7 is entering standby mode, but your search is just beginning. Live so that you aren't ashamed to watch this movie at the end. See you in the next chapter, or in the next life. End of transmission.